Thank you so much for having me. Today's topic, of course, is about reading, but let me start with something which is very important to me as a special educator. I have many years of experience at Brindavan Education Trust. I would like to read this first. Let no child be demeaned or have his wonder diminished because of our ignorance or inactivity. Let no child be deprived of discovery because we lack the resources to discover his problem. Let no child ever doubt himself or his mind because we are unsure of our commitment. So let me go to my topic about reading and learning difficulties. First of all, probably many of us recognize that, many researchers have said that the human brain is really not hardwired to read. The human brain is hardwired to, pick up oral language, but reading has to be taught explicitly. So why should we learn to read? Because as teachers, we know that the more we allow our students to read, the more their cognitive abilities improve. And of course, reading is the foundation of all academic subjects. And without reading and comprehension, children are struggling to achieve academic success. We would like all individuals to have essential reading skills like reading the street addresses, telephone numbers, PIN codes, safety messages, medicine labels, documents. Reading is complete only when there is word recognition and word and idea comprehension. Many times when I teach my students, I teach in a senior school, so sometimes the children who come to us are around 12 and they are able to read sometimes, but they are not able to comprehend what they have read. Of course, in some cases, there's no reading or comprehension happening. We have to appreciate that reading is a very rapid process. We are trying to translate symbol into sound. And when do we have to do it? In a few tenths of a second to translate every symbol to sound. And it is the speed of processing which is the most important and the most crucial. If there is a slight disorder in the speed of processing symbol and sound, that is where the reading difficulties begin. And I did say that reading is not complete without comprehension. So reading comprehension is the reader has to have prior knowledge of a topic and he has to integrate whatever he's reading with what he already knows. That means the reader is actually building upon the information he already knows. What are we doing as special educators? We are depending on the ability of the brain, an ability which is called as neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to rewire itself. So when we teach a child who has got learning difficulties with some kind of a drill and with kind of a special method of teaching these children, we are helping the brain adapt and pick up these coping skills. Even though their problems may be lifelong, they learn coping mechanisms and they become at least functional readers. Let us see how learning itself takes place. Learning itself takes place mainly through the eyes and the ears input, right? The child is observing, the child is hearing, the child is seeing visually. The next step is the child has to make sense of what is being read. He's integrating. That's what we called as prior knowledge and adding on layers of information over the existing knowledge. The next step is memory, storing the information. There are several stages in this memory, but due to the paucity of time, we cannot go into these details. There is a working memory, short-term memory, long-term memory. So the child should be able to retrieve the information and the relevant information when the child asks to do this. So that is a process called output or retrieving. So we understand the brain is very much like a computer, and a breakdown in any stage will lead to a learning difficulty. And a good special educator can assess at which stage the breakdown is happening and help the child from that point on. This is a very difficult time both for the teacher and the child. Sometimes we ask children to read in class because they're orally very good. So sometimes we do make the mistake of saying, okay, if they are orally very good, then they will be able to read. Not so, because like I said right in the beginning, the reading has to come with explicit teaching for all children. And a struggling reader does not enjoy the process. He will think of any excuse not to do the reading. He'll want to go outside. He will think of some other excuse like a stomachache. Basically, he will not read. It shatters his self-esteem. And when we have talked to children who are verbose, who can express themselves, they say the letters are looking very confused. They do not know exactly what is the position of that letter. Sometimes it looks like an N, sometimes it looks like a U. They are not able to blend these letters. So sometimes they're able to vocalize these difficulties which they have while reading. And of course, the strain is so much that they get so tired with the effort. Linked to reading difficulties, we'll see this ability called perception. Perception is the ability to see, hear, or become aware of something through our sensory organs. What are the children with learning difficulties going through? They are going through visual perception difficulties or auditory perception difficulties. The visual perception difficulties are they cannot organize the position and shape. Like I said, no, they cannot remember the shapes of the letters. It could look rotated, it could look reversed, and there is no consistency. Maybe every time they're seeing it in a different way. Auditory perception difficulties. In my class, suppose I just say the word bit and bet. Some of the children cannot make out these differences, these fine differences. And we have noticed it more and more with these vowels. The children say they hear it almost the same way. And the struggle with reading happens because the brains do not process these fast changing sounds. Right? You need to know how the letter sounds. So we come to this term called dyslexia, which means difficulty with words. We will look at this definition. Dyslexia can be defined as a difficulty in learning to read, and this is important, despite good instruction. The teacher should be on top of the subject. The teacher should be able to convey the information well. The next part of it, adequate intelligence, because children who have dyslexia are having average or above average intelligence. They also, dyslexia, despite a good cultural opportunity, okay? All children who are given opportunities to read, to have good instruction, will not find reading that difficult. Despite all this, despite good instruction, despite good cultural opportunity, if there is still a problem, then we call it as dyslexia. And it includes difficulties with spelling. Let us not think that children with dyslexia are only a bundle of difficulties. It's a sea of strengths with few difficulties. We have seen our children succeed, leave our schools and do very well. They are very good with design. Some of them are very good with problem solving because they can think out of the box. They're very creative. Some of them have very good oral skills, and we use some of these strengths to remedy some of their issues. Some of the characteristics: average to above average intelligence. I spoke about the difficulties in hearing subtle differences. This reversal in reading will go on to writing and copying also. They will skip over words, skip lines, skip words, jump over words because the eye span and the eye tracking is not happening fluently. Because of their difficulty, there's no automaticity of reading. So their reading rate is very, very slow. Some of them sound robotic. They read without expression or understanding. They have comprehension difficulties. Why? Because even though they are good with comprehension, suppose you read to them, they could comprehend well. The difficulty in decoding takes so much of effort that they are not parallelly comprehending as they read. And some of the byproducts of this is like, we have noticed some children very disorganized. If you ask them to take out a book, open some page 46, let's start reading from there. The books are all over the place. They are not able to open to the right page. Of course, I'm referring to some of the children, not all. And when we do an assessment, they are functioning at a grade lower in primary and 2 grades lower in high school. And the problem is, it's a lifespan disorder. It does go on throughout life. So what they learn is coping mechanisms. Whenever we teach any child in school, there is something called reading readiness. That means the child is ready to start reading in the language of instruction. So whatever medium of instruction the child is being taught in school, first of all, they should be comfortable with the oral language. The child should know the language he is going to read and some aspects of the language like vocabulary, word meaning, comprehension, etc. So what happens is if we rush the process, making them read before they are comfortable with the oral language, then the reading will also suffer. Another reading readiness, that is the ability to start the reading instruction, is they should be able to move smoothly from looking at a whole word and also looking at the individual letters. The child should have an adequate auditory and visual memory. And the child should be able to recognize letters of the alphabet in various forms. Today you have so many fonts on the computer. Is the child able to read in every font? In school, sometimes the child is able to read the teacher's handwriting. The same thing if the child sees outside on a billboard or in somebody else's handwriting, he's not able to read. Some of these things we take for granted. No, we take reading for granted. We just think, oh, we just open a book, we start reading. But see how many processes have to be, working well. And we spoke about those perceptual skills. So I'm not telling you all the remedial measures we use because of, there's no time to do that. Because reading and reading comprehension is an ocean. But I will just tell you 3 of the methods we have tried with our children and which have worked for us. The vocabulary box, the neurological impress method, and the language experience approach. First, we have to build up the child's vocabulary. That means, suppose you take one topic, one concept. How many words does a child know about that concept? That is one way of doing a vocabulary. There are other things called the Dolch list, which you can teach the child. Otherwise, take one concept like forest. How many words can a child say around this concept? Make them into flashcards and put them in the box. That becomes the material for you to make sentences, or the child makes sentences with those words, and that becomes the reading material because the child is familiar with that vocabulary. That is one way you can start. We have found this method useful. It is for improving the reading fluency. It is called the neurological impress method. The neurological impress method means the teacher and the student are reading aloud from the same book together. Okay, so the child is sitting next to the teacher on the side, and the teacher's voice is louder. The teacher keeps a finger or a pencil on the word being read and tracks the word as she reads and tells the child, you just read along with me. When this is repeated, what happens is the child becomes more and more familiar with the words. The child becomes more and more confident. Then what happens is we lower our voices and help and allow the child lead the reading. And the child's voice becomes louder and louder. This improves automaticity and fluency. There is another approach we have tried called the language experience approach. The principle of this approach is what I can think about, I can talk about. What I can say, I can write. What I can write, I can read. Or I can read what others write for me to read. Maybe my writing is not good. So this is from the child's point of view. What do? We ask the child to tell us some enjoyable experience he or she has had, and we write it down in the language of the child without too many corrections. We allow the child to either draw about the experience or stick photographs. And that becomes the start of the reading program for the child, where the child reads what he himself has dictated. We find that that is more interesting to the child, where he's engaged with the text. Once he's comfortable with these kind of approaches, then we take up the textbook for formal reading. A word for the parents of the children who are having, some specific needs. I think we owe it to them to tell them that we understand their anxieties. And what we need to recognize itself is that these children and students do exist. Today, we are talking of inclusivity in every school, where unless it's very, very essential, you don't have to tell the child to leave because of a specific need. They can be supported, enjoy the company of their peers, and do whatever they can. And they will get help for whatever they cannot do. The special educators are always there to give specific help if it is a very, very severe issue for the child. So give them a chance to progress through high schools and beyond. They will suffer additional emotional, social stress because of their difficulties. That is, the children will suffer. The children need to be assessed. Yes, we can advise the parents to get an assessment done so that it is not to label the children, but to understand their problem and not the problem. I would rephrase it and say we have to find their unique strengths. We will use their strengths to address their issues, because with their strengths, they can progress a lot in life. I know from my own experience in the school that many of our children have gone on to do extremely well in life. Their slow rate of learning is not their fault or the fault of their parents or teachers. It is only because their brains are wired differently and the way they process information is different. they can learn and do better in the long term if they remain at school doing at least what they can do, right? So whenever it is possible, if as a parent or as a teacher, you recognize that the child is having a problem, please consider early intervention. Schools should consider inclusion, setting up resource rooms in all the schools so that all children can grow up in an inclusive environment. Thank you so much. And if there are any questions, I'll be glad to take them.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Janaki Narayan. Very well presented. Can you stop sharing your screen so that the audience can have a better view of you, ma'am? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So I was going through the questions. There are around 14 questions, ma'am. Most of the questions are already answered by you. Each and every slide was explained in detail, but still, I would like to read those to you once again so that you can be a little more elaborate on those. Okay, thank you. The first question is, how can parents or educators identify early signs of reading difficulties in children?
The easiest way for a parent to do is they will hear it all the time, Praveena. They will know, they will have cousins, they'll have peer group, other children, isn't it? They will be observant. They will know that, oh, the other kid is doing it. And why not my child? But more and more, we are telling schools to have trained teachers. Every teacher should be trained because reading itself is an academic program. It is usually when they come to the school that, this problem is recognized. And then when the teachers tell the parents, some parents are a little upset because they feel that the child was okay. Maybe the school is making too much of it, but reading is an academic program. So more and more teachers are trained to identify this early. That will be the best solution.
Right. So what are the different approaches to assess reading and learning difficulties?
That is done by there are several. If you're talking about Bangalore, we have Nimhans, we have St. John's, we have so many very specialized people doing this for you. Okay, you just parents need to understand that we are working as a team. You have to go through a pediatrician who will refer to your team of specialists who will help you do the assessment, and we can understand where our child is at and what the problem is, right? We are looking at professional help, which is available across India now. It is not like earlier.
So it's a teamwork with the parent. Parent involvement is...
Yes, and let's not be too shy of this, okay? Let us reach out. There are enough organizations. If you reach out to me, I could tell you the path to this. How many of us are willing to help? How many people are there here in Bangalore who are going to take you through this? Only thing, keep an open mind and be willing to work as a team and don't be in a rush. Let us not just look at the age of the child and push them through classes. Let us look at abilities.
Yes. Request the audience to make a note of the name, Brindavan Education Trust in Bangalore. So you will get the details, I'm sure. So what are some misconceptions about reading and learning difficulties, ma'am?
That it is automatic. That's the first misconception, that every child is taught, by the way. It's just not children with learning difficulties, except that there are sometimes, children who come from a background where English is not, spoken at home. It mimics a learning difficulty. So, but when we start teaching them, they pick up very quickly. That's the difference. So the misconception is that reading comes innately. It is not. We have to do explicit structured teaching, more so for a child who has a learning difficulty.
So how
there are coping mechanisms?
Yes, I'm sorry, Doctor. Can I read out the next question, ma'am?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how can reading and learning difficulties impact a person's academic performance and social life?
I started by saying that a child struggling reader, even in a special setup, has a lot of issues of self-esteem. Because even if you take a child with problems, specific needs, they also fall on the average curve, right? I mean, like in the sense that you can see the ones who are very good at something, the sums which are average, even there, there is that normal curve thing that they can, some of them are very good within that spectrum. I'm telling you, some are very good, some are okay, some are average. Already, even with their own community, there is a loss of self-esteem. Reading, essential functional reading skills are required for everyday life. You need to read, to safety instructions. To that extent, yes, it does affect, but we can also use technology cleverly, not overuse, use it cleverly to help our children along.
Yes. So how important is early intervention in addressing reading and learning difficulties?
The faster you get them to us, the faster they get help. Believe me, they will be in the quotes mainstream very quickly. If some of them can be mainstream very quickly. But because what happens, I'll tell you, after class 4, the learning becomes exponential. Somewhere first, second, third, fourth, we are going at a slower pace. Everything is manageable. You kind of get fooled the child is managing. Suddenly, from class 5, you're not learning to read. You're reading to learn. So it becomes that the ability should be much more. So if you get them early, by class 5, at least they have learned some coping mechanisms.
Nice one. So what are some effective strategies for educators to support students with reading and learning difficulties in the classroom?
I already spoke about the neurological impress method with the teacher and the student or the parent and the child. Choral reading helps. There are very specific methods. Good teaching always helps all children. I would suggest that all teachers in every school use a method we call the VAKT, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and tactile method when they teach. Every concept has been taught using all 4 modalities. Sometimes a child who's having an auditory issue and the only way you're teaching is just talking, it's not going to sink in. You have to support your auditory with plenty of visuals. You have to allow the child the gross motor movements. Suppose I'm teaching a child to read the word. All you need to do is stand him up and go to the board and write it in large letters a word. That muscle memory will set in and they will remember. Give them sand, give them emery paper, give them just, if it's allowed, you can just spread some shaving foam on a tray and allow them to write the word on it so that you're teaching in all 4 modalities. That is what every good teacher should do. That's why we have experiments in chemistry with models, we are actually using equipment. We have models in geography, right? So when you use all 4 modalities to teach, that's effective teaching for all.
So coming to dyslexia, you already explained about it. The question is, can you elaborate on the specific challenges and characteristics of dyslexia?
Yeah, we went through this slide, I think, in detail.
Right.
I said that, you give the child good opportunity to study in a school where there is good teaching. The child is exposed to the language of instruction. If it is Kannada, they can talk fluently in Kannada. If the language of instruction is English medium, then they are taught to speak English orally well. Despite all that, if there is a problem, then the child is having a problem of reading.
So I think they need more information on dyslexia again. Are there other reading and learning difficulties besides dyslexia? And if so, what are some key differences, ma'am?
Dyslexia affects both spelling it affects, I told you, no, it affects like written expression also. There are, of course, for the sake of convenience, we can say dysgraphia is a problem of writing written expression. The mechanics of writing itself is dysgraphia. That means they're not able to, the grip is, difficult for them. They cannot write. It's not at all legible. There is a difficulty with mathematics. Okay, there's difficulty with calling, name calling, or finding the right words. There are several categories. But basically, we have seen when a child is having a reading difficulty, it seems to affect every other aspect also. Okay, so there are, for instance, if you have a child who's having a problem of near point copying and far point copying. Far point copying means when they see, it's not that they have a problem with their vision, okay, or their hearing. Everything has been tested. It is only the way the brain processes information. Now, what happens in far point copying? A child who's kind of comfortable with reading will read the whole word and just write it down. Now, our children who are not comfortable with either spelling or reading will be looking at each letter like that and writing down the word. By the time they say Miss rubbed out the board, the speed is affected. So, so many challenges come up.
Coming to the technology, ma'am, we have already discussed, but how can technology be used to support individuals with these difficulties, ma'am?
There are several, I mean, I'm sure modern parents are familiar with these, that, one is there is the text gets read out. We can do it in our own simple way by, in our school, we just tape the, written whatever, especially because I teach in a senior school where children do boards. We just read it out on tape and then they listen to it and then, it gets reinforced. So there are several software like this where they don't really have to know to read, but reading, one is they learn basic reading, at least for their functional skills. Secondly, it develops the cognitive abilities. There is plenty of software available in case a child is struggling. And there is also a system in our boards, specific boards, where you have to apply with a certificate that the child is having an issue, that there is a scribe where they will read out the question, the child has to just orally say the answer and it gets written down. So there are several ways in which a child can be helped. But as much as possible, let us teach them the basic functional, reading.
So how can individuals with these difficulties advocate for themselves in an academic and professional setting?
I think I can only say that we have seen it work in examples of our own children. They are working in, in organizations today, in companies across Bangalore, which believe in inclusivity. Parents have advocated for them, schools have advocated for them. And the way we do it is, we ask the organizations, what if we do? What if they do? Will they be able to get into a company like yours? And then we teach them specifically. It is the employability training program, and our children are doing extremely well. Today, there is more and more awareness. Every special educator, today, I'm so happy you brought up this question, because like your own school networks program is helping us advocate this, right? Talk about the problems our children are facing, right, Praveena? So I
Yes.
can simply say that more and more awareness is going to help. And it's all happening. Maybe sporadically it should be happening from the community level, but I cannot say it's not happening.
If they're doing great for themselves, then it's an achievement for all the special educators, right, ma'am, and the parent
Yeah, our
community.
children will be glad to come and talk to you.
Yes.
They'll be able to talk well. They'll be able to talk about their difficulties, how they overcame and where they are today. They are doing extremely well, some of them. Otherwise, we give them, whatever they can do. It's not like every child is going to do extremely well. Like I said, the average child will be finding their own niche in society. They will be taught functional skills. There are pre-vocational programs in school. They do go for a vocation.
Right, ma'am. So last question, but not the least, what are the current developments and research efforts in understanding and addressing reading and learning difficulties?
Oh, this is so ongoing. Even the most developed countries in the world are, I mean, I do not want to say this too much to the extent of stem cell therapy. This
Mhm.
kind of research is going on. What is the part of the brain which is doing the reading, and how the brain of a child with dyslexia differs from a normal reading brain, right? There's plenty of research going on. How many of them become actionable is the question. The research is there. How many can be converted into actionable, doable programs at the school level, academic level, or at the work level?
We pray that like some great outcome should come. It will definitely come, and everybody will get benefited out of this research. School Journal of Education and schoolreformer.com. Thank you for the talk and for patiently answering all the questions, ma'am. We also thank the audience for participating in the event, and wonderful questions have been posted. So as ma'am said, that you can reach out to Vrindavan Education Trust in Bangalore for any questions. And I'm sure like you can find it on Google, the contact address and the numbers. We will end the session now, ma'am. Do you want to mention anything else?
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for helping us reach out to, all the people who are watching now. Thank you so much.
Thanks
And
a lot.
please share the cause for helping our children along.
Yes. Thanks a lot. I'll end the session. Have a great day.